Yeah, yeah. I'm here at the Loon Live Studios in wild and stormy Reading in the Matt Calise house. So, my name's Hogan Brown. I'm a guide here in Northern California. I guide stripers about half the year, and then I guide trout and steelhead the other half on the lower Yuba River, Sacramento River, and the Feather River around here. I grew up in a small burg called Penn Valley. If anyone's listening and they know where Penn Valley is, kudos to you. But Matt asked me to do this show, and I was kind of looking at what I was going to tie and what I've been tying. I'm kind of transitioning from my striper flies onto my kind of fall winter trout flies, and so I kind of picked what was sitting on my bench and said, hey, how's this look? And Matt said, yeah, come on up and do it. So you can find me on Instagram at H to the G to the B, and then on Facebook at Hogan Brown Fly Fishing, and online at www.hgbflyfishing as well too, if you're interested in following any of that social media type of thing. So first fly I'm going to tie is the Yuba Pupa, and
Forrest wants to know what happened to the last Loon Live.
I'm not responsible for that, Forrest. I cannot attest to any of Matt's actions. Up until this point,
You don't have to lie, it was squirrels.
I got no responsibility. So, first fly I'm going to tie is the Yuba Pupa, and I grew up on the lower Yuba River, which, you know, a lot of people watch us from all over the country and I guess the world, so Matt tells me. But the Yuba River is going to be kind of your classic western tailwater, and so it's pretty selective hatch-based fishery. And I came up with this fly, and a lot of my flies are all based out of my guiding. You know, I never saw the vise as really like an artistic expression so much as a expression of necessity. I started tying when I was young with the concept of basically I need to tie flies that everyone else is not fishing. And here, I'll put the fly up there so you kind of see where we're going with this. Tie some flies that other people aren't fishing, because that's going to help me catch more fish than the other guys out there. And the Yuba Pupa was one of the first caddis pupa I came up with out there. And all my flies, when I come up with them, they have to be versatile in the sense of that I can tie them in any color I need. Especially my nymphs, I can dead drift them, I can fish them as a dropper, I can swing them, I can do whatever needs to be done to get a fish. It's not, I don't want to have to sit down at the vise every day off or every night and tie 20 different patterns. I want to be able to tie one pattern in a couple different colors and be able to use it for as many applications as I can. And the Yuba Pupa is probably one of the ones that I really started to first apply those principles to. So I'm going to show you how to tie this, and kind of the base of this. I tie this on a lot of different hooks, but a couple keys. It's basic scud hook. I use the fire hole. What do we call these things? It is the fire hole 316 competition nymph emerger. Okay, it's big league, it's competition fly. I really like these. I started tying with fire hole hooks probably late in the game. The first, if you look at the commercial versions of these, they're all tied on the 2488, and I like the straight shank or the straight eye for swinging versus the curved down eye of the 2457. I'm going to use 8/0 thread. Just start this. Work it to about the middle. I'm going to tie in the rib, and I use copper brown small. And one kind of tip whenever I'm tying in wire, I always try to focus and tie the wire to the side of the hook shank. Okay, this is going to keep kind of that flatter and wider versus tall and fat profile. Work it down to about the back there. And again, as I tie this fly, keep in mind you can tie this in a ton of different colors. I like the light kind of tan. I use a tan dry fly dubbing.
So somebody asked how many days a week do you give Hunter detention?
Oh, I also teach high school too. So yeah, I have I assume many of my students, or not many, but let's be honest, some of my students may be watching. So if you are, thanks for tuning in, and turn it off and go do your homework. You know, the semester's about to end here pretty soon. So
So it's grade time, right?
Yeah, it's grade time. So, you don't need to be staying, 6 o'clock, that's prime homework time wherever you're at if you're on the West Coast here. So I use a lighter underbody just based on most of the caddis pupa that I see in my waters. They have a lighter, kind of what I would say a back end, and kind of work into a darker color. And that's one thing that I do a lot with this fly, no matter what color I tie it in, is I definitely vary the colors of the fly as you move forward. And one reason I use the dry fly dubbing on a lot of my flies, a lot of my nymphs, is that most nymphs that when we tie, most of us don't tie with the nymph in front of us to look at, or the pupa, or whatever you want to call it. But most of the time when you pull these bugs out of the water, they're much skinnier than at least any of the commercial production ties that you're going to see. And I always tell people that, the trimmer the better, so to say. So the next thing I do, I take a small piece of this pearl opal flash for a little bit of a flashback.
Ebbs Force 1 is claiming that dry fly dubbing doesn't work on nymphs, that it'll float.
Dude, we're in California, man. The size of weights I fish would sink a dry fly. I could put hackle on this thing, like palmer this thing with some hackle, and it'd still sink.
I think he's being sarcastic.
Oh, I know. So am I. So then I'm going to rivet with this copper brown.
239 Flies was wondering if you'd mind going into sex education. Apparently he missed that.
Oh, this is awesome. So I teach history, and at one point I did have to teach health, which is modern day sex education. How I taught that is I just said, here's the textbook. Go for it. So yeah, that's I can show you where the textbook is located at your local public library. Next thing, and this is, if you notice, the profile for the back of the caddis is only really about halfway.
I'm getting picked on by Nick now.
So, yeah, pick on Matt. I mean, I'm just trying to tie some flies. So, I use a really light color. This is Mercer's, one of Mercer's buggy kind of flash dubbings. It's the caddis. And one thing with this fly is I really loosely dub it. And I always kind of take it and then pull it back like that. And I'll put a little bit more on. But what we're going to do here is, you look at the recipe, there's about 5 layers of dubbing. Next one I'm going to use, and I just started using this stuff. I actually just ordered some of it off the website, is the Franken dub.
Jeremiah asks if that fly would work in Oregon.
Yes. For my fly sales, this fly will work anywhere. Again, I use the light olive. Kind of pick it out, pull it back. And then at this point, this is kind of a halfway point for this one. I'm going to take some of I got this UV tan crystal flash, and I kind of do what I would call an underwing. Cut a little bit off of it, and take it and fold it in half twice. No, it'd be 4 times, because I'm going to get 4 strands. So I take those 2 strands and I set it right on top. That's one element of this. I kind of always use the UV tan.
Can't see. I don't know if you can zoom on here, can you?
And I trim it like that, real short.
Wow, dude. See. I just learned how to zoom on an iPad. I feel like pretty next level.
Matt's still learning how to use the technology, so yeah, that looks pretty. That's zoomed in. So one thing I don't vary is I layer these dubbings. I'll vary all sorts of different stuff, experiment. A couple of the key concepts, though, as you go forward in the fly, you want to become darker. Okay, if you look at any caddis pupa, it does look darker as you go forward. But definitely experiment with this. I do it in a lot of different colors.
Apparently nobody else knew that iPad could zoom, because I'm blowing people's mind.
Oh, I don't know. I don't own an iPad. So the next color I use here is the dark olive nymph dub, the Franken dub as well.
I think I can even like center the fly. Dude, this technology is blowing me away right now.
Again, loosely palmer it and pinner it.
Oh, they said now that it's closer, they can tell it definitely won't work in Oregon.
Yeah, it's got that elitist California vibe. Next thing I'm gonna do.
Now I'm getting heckled that you still have a Walkman. Could be. Never know.
We did just exchange mixtapes.
Yeah.
Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put in the wing buds. And if you look at any caddis pupas, that thing's kind of pupating or swimming to the surface. It's got its wing buds on the side. And for this, I use just nymph brown goose biots. But again, really anything or any color can be varied. The one thing that I've found that's pretty important about the goose biots and the wing buds is that whatever color you use for the back or the body of the pupa, we use the tan on this fly, make sure that the wing buds are darker. That way they stand out over it and kind of create some three dimension as the light refracts off of it. Just looks a little cleaner, stand out a little more, gives the fly a little bit more three dimensions as it's coming through the water or the fish see it. Next, after I put those wing buds in, I'm just going to give it a little bit more of the Franken dub.
It's in both of his boats under the seat. Wow. It must have been the only time that guy could do a burnout because it's raining.
Somebody just peel out there?
Yeah, you know.
Dude.
A sheephead would eat this. This is Nick from 239 Flies.
Sheephead, I don't even know what that is.
Some sort of saltwater fish.
Some sort of salt breather. And the last color I'll put over this, and I just use a little bit of it, is the werewolf brown. And I wasn't even sure if I would use this. I kind of just ordered it based on the name, but it's actually a really cool color that has actually a bunch of different, as I would say, hues in it.
That's an interesting theory. So Backwater Tech says that he thinks it looks like a sand flea. Like, so he could almost like manipulate the pattern, maybe to work for saltwater fishing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for catching as many fish as I can on one pattern. That means I only got to tie one. So yeah, I go for it. The next thing I'll do for this one is I'm going to throw a head on it. And I mean, you can realistically tie it off here and call it good, but I think every fly needs at least some peacock curl in it. So I tie a little bit of just one strand of peacock curl there. Give it a few, tie a circle or two.
Catch a peacock bass on that in South Florida.
So I had this friend that had this theory that you could catch like every fish in the world on a woolly bugger, and like he actually like he tied a couple white ones and went baby tarpon fishing with them, caught baby tarpon on them. I thought it was a pretty cool deal, like over the course of a couple years.
Nice.
I mean, I'm not sure I'd do that with a caddis pupa, but
no, you'd have to be very selective with your one pattern.
Yeah. So that's the Yuba pupa. Definitely, like most of my flies, I look at economy of tying, and that you can tie this in a ton of different colors. You can vary it, you can trim it down. I fish it down to about an 18. Montana Fly Company ties this, and they sell it in 2 colors, an olive and a tan. But by all means, tie some up, try it, see what you come up with. I love, one thing I do love is people tying my flies and telling me where they catch fish on them, because I was a full-time husband and laborer and worker with a family. I don't get to travel to fish as much as I used to, so they get fished on a fairly few or limited number of rivers. So that's that.
Forrest asked. I could answer it for you.
Yeah.
Are you the creator of the S&M?
I am the creator of the S&M. Yes, I am the creator of the S&M. The S&M paid a lot of bills in my house. For well, it still does. Yeah, I am. So thanks if you're fishing that for us. Thank you.
Rich says it's not a guide fly.
Yeah, dude. The S&M is like the definition of a guide fly.
Aaron's a long time participant. He says that's a beautiful fly.
Oh well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, the reason I know that is a guide fly is because when I first came up with it, a lot of my guide buddies could actually tie it. And if you know anything about guides, a lot of them are not the most adept at tying flies. So, the next one I'm going to show you is for all intents and purposes, it's the Military May, but I made some changes to it.
I'm stealing all those back by the end of the day to go on my board.
There you go. Dude, I'm going to reach board status. This is definitely, if you're an S&M guy, this is definitely a derivative of the S&M. On our tailwaters around here, the Sacramento and the Yuba, and really, realistically, all of them, small mayflies are kind of a pretty big thing. And it's funny how many variations we have in our tailwaters of mayflies, and how often, one color works in the morning, another color works in the afternoon, another color works in the evening. And one of the, outside of dubbing, I found when I was really starting to kind of tailor my mayfly selection, was that thread offers the most versatile kind of palette for colors. And there's that new bobbing threader that Loon just came out with. Oh yeah, I should use that. Yeah, because I suck my thread through my bobbin. Let me dig that out. Yeah, I got that. I got that in here somewhere. Oh, here it is. I got it. Don't worry. So I'm going to use the new Loon bobbing threader based on my old methods. Little rudiments. Kelsey says it's weird having me on this side of the live session. I like being on this side of the live session. Dude, I don't know how you do it with all the tech. I mean, if you need to do like a Loon Live tour of this room, because this is an impressive feat. There's multiple computers and cameras and more dead animals than a hunter's Carl Cabela's room. I'm having trouble holding it together, tying the flies. I don't know how you do the broad. I have a whole new appreciation for this. So it's always fun when people are like, "Can you shoot me a picture of what you're doing?" And then you show them like multiple computer screens, different places that that it's coming in from. This is insane. I have no idea how you do this. So the Military Mayfly line was kind of based on a combination of glass beads and thread colors. To be honest with you, and again, it's total guide fly in the sense of like, I needed basically a platform that I could tie mayflies on, and the Military Mayfly was kind of my more flashy mayfly, a little bit more of an attractor, but it's built off basically the same undercarriage as the S&M and really all my mayflies, to be honest with you. For this one, I'm going to use the Firehole 633. This is a 16, again, competition, because let's be honest, we mean business. It's the nymph hook. I tied it on the 3769 Tiemco. Matt has me tying a couple of them on a what's that mustad hook? Is it a mustad hook? I don't know. Matt has me tying them on a different hook than I used to, but for this one I'm going to use the Firehole just because I've been tying it on these and I like these. The principle of this one, this fly that I'm going to show you, it definitely has way more steps and is a lot more complicated than the version of the Military Maze you would buy from a fly shop or something. But what's cool about this is take or leave any steps that you want. You can make this as simple and trim as almost a notch above a thread midge, or you can add as many elements that I'm going to show you as you want. And I kind of take that idea from, I was lucky enough to spend, not a lot, but a fair amount of time with Bob Quigley before he passed, and as I was kind of at an impressionable age, so to say. And he always said something to me that really stuck with me, and it was that dial the silhouette of the fly, dial the look and match of the bug, and then add all the other elements. And that's really how I approach my tying of mayfly nymphs. And probably should all my flies. But first thing for this one, I'm going to use the 8/0 camel. It's kind of a brownish thread. I'm going to start the thread right there. Work it to the middle.
Quigley rocked.
Oh yeah, yeah. They did. I learned more from, yeah, that's an understatement. For the military mayfly, I think the recipe online says mallard flank only shot from California ducks, which I have a giant sack of mallard flank, if I can center it here.
It's a couple.
It's a couple dead ducks in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Lifetime supply. So I use the natural as I strip it off and throw it on Callie's floor.
That's fine. I have a vacuum.
Perfect. So I'm going to use mallard flank as a tail. On the S&M or some of my other mayflies, I'll use three pheasant tail fibers. I can't tell you one.
We can't say anything that Nick at 239 Flies is saying anymore.
Okay. And banned.
He appreciates that sack of mallard.
So I tie it in on top, and what I do is I tie it into the shank of the fly. And whenever I'm tying these mayflies, one thing that I've discovered is, and I'm sure I'm not the first guy to discover it, but it's really, I've based my tying on it, is that if you tie in, whether it's mallard shank, PT, whatever it is, and you actually tie the fiber all the way to the hook shank, I guess you could probably use these fancy scissors, you will actually develop a taper to the fly just by the fact that the fibers taper. And so just like that, it doesn't look like it, but I'm very careful to stack those thread wraps together, and I trim that off. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use that same copper brown wire. And again, like I said when I was tying the Yuba pupa, with these mayflies, and this is basically the back end of an S&M too, I tie that wire to the side of the hook shank, stacking those thread wraps together, giving it the fly a wide look, like a mayfly. You can kind of see looks a little wider than if you tied that to the bottom. Now this, I'm going to add some elements here that you don't always have to element. You can subtract them. I'm going to add a flashback on the back end here and just tie it in. This is that small opal mirage tinsel. Then I tack it down with the wire. And again, all this stuff can be varied to any degree that you find works for your mayflies, the color of mayflies, whatever.
Tricky. I like that. I'm getting heckled for having a bobbin threader on the show.
That's the first time I think I've ever used a bobbin threader, but like I was totally choking under the pressure of sucking that thread through my bobbin. So that thing came in clutch right now on live interweb. All right, so next thing for a wing case on this,
Nick from 239 Flies is giving you mad props for not breaking that like 22/0 thread that you're using.
Dude, I'm trying. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm not nervous, Nick. Like, but you know, I'm coming in. I'm coming in hot. I gotta do this. So
new tying station, new bobbin, new scissors.
So for my wing case for this, I actually use scud back. Okay, it's the 1/8. I use the tan.
So good, real question. You don't spin your thread to threaten it out, like some guys will sit there and it's like if you have like ultra threads and like guys are like spinning it their bobbin to like get the thread to flatten out.
I'm gonna sound not really intelligent here, and I didn't even know that that was a thing.
Neither did I. I don't really do that either.
No. You got like I'm a self-taught fly tyer, and I'm and I'm a guide who ties flies to fish in the drift boat, and like most of my knowledge of fly tying realistically comes from looking at other people that I looked up to, and that'd be Mike Mercer and Bob Quigley, and then I was an only child on 20 acres, so it was like I got into hobbies you could do on your own.
Right.
Right, and so I snorkeled a lot, and I watched fish feed on the lower Yuba. I spent a lot of time underwater, and definitely a cool hobby when you're in high school.
Right.
Totally got me all the hot dates and all that. But so no, like there's a lot of tricks and stuff that I don't know. So no, I don't do that.
Here's a good question.
Okay.
Do you ever use GSP threads? Because I only tie with one thread. I don't know if you know that.
I know you only tie with one thread, and you've told me that many times. No, I started to think about it. Like I used to think I was on the cutting edge of stuff, and now I realize like I'm kind of behind the game on some of this. But like no, I I don't use some of the cutting edge GSP threads. I'm sad to say I still use the old school. What are they? Uni threads. I guess you use what works and what you're comfortable with.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I use ADOT for my trout stuff. One of the guys that I learned to tie with, like I wasn't allowed to use anything when I started working at this fly shop in Nevada City. Like I tied everything on ADOT because he thought that was like what taught you skills. If you used big thread or heavy thread, it was easy.
Okay. Right.
I use 3/0 for my striper flies, which I tie a ton of.
Right.
But no, I don't. Feel free to, though. I mean, so one thing I add on these, and on the S&M PMD and a lot of my PMD flies, I add some gills.
Okay.
And one thing you can do here is you can add.
The guy asked, "What vise are you tying on?"
I use a Regal. I'm not sure what the model is. I have literally had this Regal vise for
It's a durable one.
12 years. I mean, there's some spots on here where like I've literally worn off the paint from sitting
anodized.
Yeah. I use this one, and then I have the big game jaws, which I tie all my striper flies on. So before I had this vise, I used a Dynaking, and I wore out the jaws on the Dynaking about once a year. So I have had this set of jaws, or this vise here, for
I would say
a long time.
That is the medallion.
The medallion? I mean, why wouldn't it be? I mean,
yeah. It has a medallion on top.
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. So that's what I tie on.
Mr. Hunter is excited to be watching you.
Welcome, Hunter.
Instead of doing his homework.
Hunter. The semester is.
So I'll stop screwing with you.
No. So now I'm gonna throw in some gills, and basically, one thing too I should say you can do here before you do that is one little cool thing I'll show you.
Snorkelers are always cool.
Snorkels. Yeah, it didn't pan out well for like the social aspect of it, but I definitely learned a lot. One thing I will do that's kind of a cool trick I started doing is I'll put a medium strand of that Mylar underneath this see-through scud back. I'll show you what that's kind of you have to wait in anticipation to see how cool that is. But so I tie in some of this jailbreak marabou, and again I do this on a couple of my Mayfly patterns. It's actually too much. I should pop some of that out.
So use that instead of dubbing.
Well, you'll see.
Oh.
Wait for it.
Suspension.
Suspense. So I palmer it. And yes, you could use it instead of dubbing, I guess, but I tie it. And this, if you're an S&M guy, this is how you get the gills on the PMD version of the S&M. And then I take that, and I pin it back like that.
Firehole Outdoors is late to the party. Well, Joe, your hook is in the vise, buddy.
Yeah, it's the second one. I just got my first shipment a couple months ago. So
there you go.
Thank you. So I pin those back, and you get that little bit of gill flare.
Nick says Mylar is what the military uses to spread across the sky to control the weather.
I have no doubt. Nick, at this point in my life, I will entertain any theory. I mean, I will read the article. So if you have it, you can forward that to me. I'm not saying I'm buying in, but I'm going to read the article. Next thing, I'm going to use some Mercer's PMD dubbing. And again, with this one too, less is more. Like most things, Mayfly nymph oriented. Go just like that. And again, feel like you can subtract anything, add any colors. Then again, I'll remove a mallard flank feather.
Luke has a great point. He goes,
yeah.
Why does Nick even care about nymphs? Because he lives in Florida and he wants to learn about trout fishing and skills. No.
Super skills.
Super skills.
I bought some of Nick's flies and fished them for stripers and carp. So, I mean, you could try my flies if you wanted.
I bet you money that if you sent, like, Nick some of your striper flies, like, he would catch a tarpon on them.
You think so?
I think so.
The big clousers and stuff?
Yeah, oh yeah. All the big fishy stuff?
Yeah. Alright, so a little clump of mallard flank. I'm going to give it some legs on each side, because I'm not sure it really makes a difference, but it makes a difference when I look at it. And again, you can use a lot of different stuff for legs and substitute it for darker or lighter. There's a couple times I've thrown little rubber legs on the side of these, and if the water's a little off color.
He claims that he can catch tarpon on half of a Newport menthol. So that he's confident, to say the least.
Damn, I like that. So what he's saying is I'm coming out to Florida with a pack of menthols.
He basically just invited us next year for iCast, is really what I gathered from this.
Yeah, I would like that. I spent some time in Florida at iCast this year. As we did together. We spent time together. So I pull that mylar over the top, and then I'm going to pull the, basically, I guess, thin skin, or whatever you want to think of it as. It's the scud back. I like to think of it as ready to use thin skin or nymph skin or whatever it is. It's just already cut for me.
Right.
And pull it over. Kind of gives it a little subdued to the flash. Tie it off. Not using the Loon whip finishing tool, but using the old standby my.
Did you ever tie commercially?
You mean like sweatshop? Like tie a lot of flies?
Personal sweatshop?
I mean, like when people buy flies and you tie them?
Yeah.
No, I mean, no.
Okay.
I have to fill my own box. You know what I mean?
Nick says don't threaten him with a good time, so we're just going to have to show up there.
Okay. I can do that.
Sophie asks, where do you fly fish?
Where do I fly fish? I live in Chico, California, which is in Northern California, or we lovingly refer to the great state of Jefferson. I spend half my year striper fishing on the lower Sac, which is a big tailwater that drains about all of Northern California. So March, April-ish, depending on our spring, through October. I guide for stripers out of a jet boat on the lower Sac and fish out there. And then starting about this time of year, I start to transition over to trout and steelhead fishing on the lower Yuba River, and then farther up north, right around where Matt lives in Redding. So yeah, that's where a lot of these flies were born, is on the lower Sac and the lower Yuba. So next thing I do is I put a little dab of Matt's...
Rich lives in Roseville, Jefferson's capital. No.
No, dude, if you have the other state's capital close by, you can't have the new state's capital. So I put a drop of Matt's Miracle Liquid, otherwise known as Loon Fly Finish Thick.
That's the thick?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ivan was nice enough to put a needle on there so you didn't
I appreciate that.
look like a total goober.
I'm going to use the tip of these scissors. I usually have a couple needles that I poach off my wife's sewing desk. That I kind of give it the loving spread.
NorCal Fly Fisher, how well do you think the lower Sac will be fishing in the next few weeks to come?
For stripers or trout?
Well, we'll have to wait for clarification.
Okay. And then I hit it with this amazing new light.
It's kind of blinding.
Dude,
It's intense.
quite possibly the brightest UV light. It actually, I think the new Loon UV light comes with a skin cancer warning. Yeah. I'm going to get some melanoma on the tips of my fingers. So yeah, that's the Military Mayfly. Definitely vary it. Change it. You can take the gills out to trim it up a little bit.
How many colors do you tie it in?
Man, I tie it in an olive. Like the red-headed stepchild, if you're familiar with that fly, is basically just the Military Mayfly in red and peacock. So I use that with a red bead and red wire. Olive and kind of brown, and then like more of like a PMD color are probably the three that I fish the most.
Is that a spotlight? Somebody asked if we use eye protection. No, because you're always pointing it away from you. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I do. I don't know. You seem to point it towards me right now. But it's all right.
There'll be an intermission while Matt regains his sight. Yeah, so that's the Military Mayfly, and no, I do not use eye protection.
Because you're pointing it at like the wall, typically at your bench. You know, it's like, or you're onto your bench. I don't.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous now though. Like, you never told me I needed to.
I don't think you do.
I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I wear sunscreen when I'm outdoors, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's see. They want you to tie that reverse. Take care, Nick. See you later, buddy. Let's see. Oh, he was asking about trout. Yeah, trout always fish all year long on the lower Sac.
Yeah. I mean, it's day to day. One day is better than the next, but on average, yeah, the lower Sac. To be honest with you, I actually like December as probably one of my favorite months out there. I mean, Matt may have a different opinion, but what happens in December is, a lot of the Redding local guides,
They're on the Trinity.
yeah, they leave for the Trinity, and you legitimately have most of the river as a guide to yourself, which is let's be honest, a rarity on the Sac.
Yeah, no, it's...
And I don't think you necessarily catch the numbers that you may in like in October or November, but you catch some big fish.
yeah, if you like catching 20-inch plus fish on size 18 to 20
Yeah,
patterns
yeah.
and Betas patterns, that's kind of the...
That's kind of the gig. I mean, it's not everybody's gig, but that's the gig. So, yeah, no, it should fish fine. We got plenty of water this year. I mean, we've gotten a lot of rain the last day or two.
Kind of shocking, right?
Yeah. Like, I'm actually may have to check the flows before I guide this weekend on the Yuba and see if like it may have moved. All right, next up. So next up is a jig fly, and I'm gonna be straight. Like, I made fun of Matt for a really long time about fishing jig hooks, and I refused to fish jig hooks for as long as I possibly could, which is, I'm going to be honest, and Matt can attest to this, a pretty damn long time.
What, making fun of my crappie jigs?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, when Matt ties crappie, he sends me these pictures of things with like thread, and I'm just like,
Forrest asked a good question.
Yeah.
And, so he asked, is it possible to wade and fish the lower stack?
you know, yes. You got to be selective about where you do it. You probably know better than I do the answer to that question. I mean, yeah, I mean Cypress area, Bonneview, not Bonneview, Posse Ground.
Yeah, Posse Grounds, below 44 you can get in there.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of riffles there now. There's a bunch of...
What would you say the flow? I would say like 5, maybe? 5?
I'll cross anything at 8.
Okay. So 5. So 5. So 5.
No, but it's the perfect time of the year to be...
Yeah,
like,
winter is wade fishing time.
Yeah.
I would say.
And a lot of the times, I go out there and swing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of times the boat's just for shuffling me around.
Yes.
So we should open up like a raft rental business and just loan rafts to people.
I mean, why not? I need something else to do.
Right, yeah, you don't have enough going on.
Me and you don't have enough going on.
So
I need another business to pour money into, please. So all I'm doing right now is switching my thread over with the Loon bobbin threader, not my mouth. And I'm going to be tying a jig fly, which I think, what do you even call it? You call it a jig fly? Is there some like check nymph
I don't,
type?
like with that, what is that? That's the Firehole 516.
Yeah.
I don't really differentiate anymore between jigs and non-jigs. But I get yelled at because I put my epoxy backs back here because
that's the top of the fly.
To me.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
And even though that everybody's like, oh, it's keel balanced, all this other junk.
Yeah.
I put them through ripples and nerded out because I still snorkel.
Yeah.
And
he has a wife and kids, so don't judge.
Yeah. I mean, soccer dad, right?
Yeah, totally.
But those they still flop around, so it doesn't matter which side you do it.
Yeah.
I just like hook gaps.
Yeah, I'm not tying flies that are a top or bottom fly yet on the jig hooks. I'm still tying you'll see soft tackle variations and stuff like that. So I haven't broached that. The bead I'm using though is the new Lucent jig bead by Montana Fly Company. I got a bunch of these from those guys. They tie most of my flies, at least the ones they think will sell. So it comes in a ton of colors. For this one, you want to show them what it looks like? You got this one?
Yeah,
Andy?
it's right here, sorry.
All right, yeah.
Here you go.
Production on this operation. So this is it. This is what we're going to tie. I call it the gigolo. Play on words. But basically a red fox squirrel nymph kind of variation that I use.
Courtney has a really good question.
Sure.
On the other live, one of our 3 live stream channels that we have going here. Do you fish the Military May more than the S&M?
Ooh, that's a good question. I fish a lot of flies more than the S&M now because everybody fishes it. I actually, to be honest with you, I don't fish I don't fish the S&M really at all anymore. I fish a couple Mayflies. One that's out through Montana Fly, which was kind of a fly I came up with to replace the S&M. And the thing I will do when I look at the S&M versus the Military Mayfly is the sack is not a group of fish that really respond well to flash. Like, they don't like super flashy patterns, at least in my opinion. So I don't fish the Military Mayfly a lot there. The lower Yuba, those fish seem to like flashier patterns at times, and I fish the Military Mayfly a lot there. Usually off-color water situations, I fish the Military Mayfly more than I do the S&M, and I don't really see them as interchangeable, so I fish them both in very different situations, if that makes sense. Alright, so the gigolo.
Yeah, fish really muted stuff on the logo.
Yeah, it's never been one that I've done well on the...
Every once in a while I'll get wild and throw a hot bead on something. That'll be a big day.
Yeah, like the hot orange.
Right.
That's like my hot bead color.
Right.
All right. So I'm going to start some black thread here.
Gingerfly 403 says, "Gotta fish the meat as well, be versatile." Man, if we could throw streamers on the lower, that would be like the biggest fun thing ever. But it's not going to work out.
No.
If we find that one brown that somebody catches every 10 years, we might get us some play.
Yeah, I think if a lower sack trout had to move to like eat a streamer, it'd probably have a coronary before it got to the streamer.
Courtney's blown away that you don't fish the S&M.
Yeah, I haven't. I'll be honest with you. I haven't fished the S&M in probably. Well, it's the deal with the S&M was like my whole fly tying philosophy is like as soon as it goes into production, like I stop fishing it.
Absolutely.
Because if you just keep fishing the stuff that works, you're never going to come up with new stuff. So, a lot of the mayflies that I have out through Montana Fly are kind of the second generation stuff. That's the stuff I came up with when the military mayfly started to get big. And it was very obvious that I needed to come up with other stuff, and that's what I did. But yeah, I haven't fished the S&M probably in 8 or 9 years.
Good thing I didn't have you tie that.
Well, I mean, I'd be happy to show people how to tie it if we got time, but no, I don't fish it anymore. So the back legs on these, it's the Grizzly Micro rubber legs. If these are probably the perfect size for like medium size nymphs. And I'm sure there's probably a more efficient way to tie these in, but this is how I do it.
I'm just too ADD to tie the same fly, like, for mayfly patterns.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just tie, you've seen my boxes. They're like 60 different mayfly patterns, and you're like, what'd you catch? I don't even know.
Yeah, no, I've been very economical about, and I guess I'm pretty ADD, but at the same time, I mean, when I'm guiding trout, dude, people are going to lose like a dozen flies, right? And I sit down and try to tie the same pattern just in different colors. Right. And that goes back to kind of the Bob Quigley philosophy that I have is it's stick the silhouette. Right. If the silhouette is solid, you've done what you need to do with the fly. The silhouette works, then move off that. Change little things, color, flash, and don't go away from a silhouette or a profile that works.
Of your base pattern.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All right, so the next thing I got this stiff pearl midge flash. I'm going to use this as kind of the crystal or the flash ribbing on this thing. Then again, I tried to let that dub go. Oh, there it
Tried
is.
to clean up too much?
No, I'm trying to be economical and not bring half my fly tying bench, but that didn't work. So for the body of this thing, I'm using the Franken dub again. This is the Teddy Bear Brown. Again, totally bought this stuff just because the color name was cool. And hey, that pans out probably 10% of the time, and you're you get it in the mail, and you're like, what the hell is this color? But this is good stuff. It's kind of a light brown. It's got a little UV flash in it, just enough to give it a little something every once in a while when you see it. But it's a light brown. I like it. Works for a good bird's nest color too, if you like that kind of natural bird's nest. But with this, I'm just going to palmer it around like you would any nymph and try to taper it the best I can, but that doesn't always work out. Then go back and kind of clean it up a little bit.
We listen to a lot of reggae on this show.
I noticed that. Reggae and Redding. There we go. Alright, then I'm gonna palmer the crystal. With that little flash rib.
Or it was a little bit from like a hare's ear.
Oh yeah, it's total hare's ear style fly. I mean, yeah, it's not a, I'm not reinventing the wheel with this thing. But to be honest, when you started tying with jig fly or jig hooks, it was the first one I really...
Kennedy Brothers ask if it actually rides upside down. Guys, no, it flops all over the place. I think it's actually, I think I land more fish on them because of the leverage advantage of a jig. Like just the pull point, like moves the point of the hook in. If the fish is trying to get away from you.
That's way too much. I'm going to just trim the tails like that. That's way too much science for me. I'm just going to agree with Matt on that one. So yeah, maybe. I'm going to give that a maybe.
If my 4-year-old catches more fish when we switch to jig flies, I find it very scientific.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with that evidence. I support that. All right, the next thing, I give it a little soft tackle collar.
What do you need?
I'm looking for my English grouse soft tackle.
You want English grouse?
Here, I got some right here.
You sure?
I got some, yeah.
Got a couple boxes of it.
Perfect. It's actually, no, what is this? Yeah, it's English grouse soft tackle. From a grouse that was shot in England.
Can you confirm this assassination of said grouse?
Hairline says it on the bag, so it's true. So, just gonna give it, I always kind of measure it out, but I just kind of pull it back like this. I'm not super clean and picky about how my soft tackles go. I think the whole purpose of the soft tackle is to look buggy and pulse and do all this stuff. So I just tie it right in at the tip, palmer it.
Let's see. Do you, Rick asks, do you ever mix custom dubbing colors, personally?
Oh, man.
I'm a huge fan of doing that.
I'm a huge fan of doing that. And you know, it's one of those things. It's like you got to judge your time. There's so many good dubbings out there that I'm just gonna pin this back. That I just don't have the time. I mean, I'll mix stuff like haphazardly on the bench if I'm just like, that doesn't really look right. But no. I wish I did. I guess I wish I had more time to do stuff like that, but no.
Oh, I missed something. That looks important. How do you fish jig style flies? I just fish them under an indicator.
That's a good question. To begin with, I don't really fish them any differently than you would any other fly. I fish them under like our normal indicator setup that we have here in California. One thing I've experimented with, we fish like a 3-fly setup on a lot of the waters as we kind of push indicators out of the boat. And I don't know if you've done this, Matt, but I experiment with like where in the order of the 3 flies I fish it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I tend to find that fishing it as the bottom, or what I guess people would refer to as the point fly,
right,
is a little bit more effective.
So that hook that I showed you that I was custom making, I'm tying like horrifically ungodly heavy rubber legs to run as a point fly.
Okay, yeah.
And then doing triple surgeons like a Christmas tree off, you know, for my other 2 top flies.
Yeah. So you're basically running a gill net.
Yeah. Stick dynamite.
Yeah. I'm basically running a gill net. So next I'm going to take the grizzly micro legs and smoke. These are great. I don't know, it's just a great size. They move well on smaller flies, but they don't get all jankety tangled.
Kennedy's brothers are defending the use of a jig hook because Matt said they catch more fish. I love it.
Are they agreeing with you?
I don't know. We'll have to wait for the Kennedys to respond. But Yeah, you can actually absolutely you can tie smaller bodied flies with a bigger hook gap.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm fishing like size 18s and 20s.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I'm gonna be straight. Like, I don't like the fact that they catch fish. Like,
like the super Euro style competition stuff.
Yeah, like I don't. I'm gonna give it a little. Just to this. The head on this is the werewolf, and I'm gonna give it a little bit before I put the rubber legs on. I mean, I avoided at all cost fishing jig hooks just because I don't know. I just didn't want to have to retie a bunch of patterns, but they work. I mean, I don't know if they work better, but I mean, if they work, they work. I mean, I'm still not tying the like all UV resin thread flies that like you send me pictures of, but
It does have materials underneath all that UV resin.
yeah, dude. I'm not there yet. I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid.
Flint says check nymphing is the way to go in NorCal.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't do a lot of walk and wade fishing anymore. But yeah, I know a lot of my buddies. Guy I fished with this last weekend down in the Delta. Well, you've been on his podcast, Chad Alderson.
Yeah.
Chad does a ton of it.
It's amazing what you can do with it in a big river.
You know, I probably should, you know, but I don't. Alright, so then I give it a head of that werewolf dub. And I mean, this is a pattern. You don't have to tie this on a jig hook. You can tie it on really anything you want. But give it a few thread wraps behind that bead. Tie it off old school. And a few knots.
I like it. They're asking me if we're going to make a smaller bobbin. That could be a thing.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. Are you struggling with that one?
Are you saying I have small hands? Did someone just say my hands look small? They're normal size hands. So right here I trim the legs. I like, you know, for aesthetic purposes, I like the short front, long back.
Kennedys don't like the guys who are check nymphing out of the boat. No, you have to get out of the boat to check nymph on the big river. There's not a lot of spots to do it though.
check nymph out of the boat.
Either there was an atomic bomb or we have a really good lightning storm going on.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, so that is the gigolo. I fish it on a lot of different waters. I fish it, you know, if you're listening and you're in NorCal, the Kennedy brothers, a couple other people, but that's like, I fish that in the rocks a lot, down lower on the Sac. I fish it in the swirls.
I'm going to end this really quick. Do you want to tie an S&M? Because it just the big live stream's fine. Instagram limits you in an hour.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just start a new live video.
Okay.
You all right with that?
Sure,
All
yeah.
right. Hold on, Instagram. We'll be right back. That's my finger. I apologize. It's fat.
All right.
Save, share. You're still. So this guy's still going.
Okay.
And we'll just add to our story live, and you're back.
All right. So.
Oh, it's checking the connection. But you never really left.
All right.
Do you need anything for the S&M?
You got a pheasant tail?
Yeah, of course. Watch. Nope, that's not a pheasant tail. Where'd it go? Give me like 30 seconds. It's dark in here. How much, do you need more than like half of a pheasant tail?
No, that's fine.
That'll be sufficient.
Yeah.
Okay. What else do you need? Do you need fine flash boo, 6905?
Yes.
Okay, 6905.
No, I don't need that.
Okay.
We're going to do it in brown here.
That wasn't very nice. Hey, I'm sorry. It times out in an hour.
And goodbye.
And you're done. What else do you need?
Let's see. Do you have any small olive wire?
Small olive wire. Do you need like a size 16?
These fire holes are 16.
Oh, you have that one?
Yeah, it'll be a little big, but they'll get the point.
I fish it in a 16. I don't find it too bad.
All right. So while Matt scrounges materials,
I'm gonna have to go in the beast cave now.
we can make it. Oh no, dude, we're good. We're good.
You sure?
I'm positive. I'm
Alright,
positive.
I have a wire bin in here.
All right. So S&M. basic short, straight shank mid hook. I'm going to use the fire hole one I was tying on earlier. The what do they call it? 633. Again, the whole thing with the S&M is just trim. Okay. And to make trim mayflies, especially when you're using thread bodies, it's all about minimizing the use of thread, which I guess makes sense to some degree. I always start the thread and I work to the middle. That's going to minimize the amount of times that I go back and forth over the shank. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick...
Oh, hold on. I have to zoom in again using this new magic function.
Okay, magic function.
Oh, wait. Hands are in... Oh, gosh. Trouble. Bingo. Look at that technology.
Damn.
I have a BR olive and...
Oh, yeah, there we go. Nice work.
I can try.
All right.
I can try every once in a while.
So I'm going to take 3 pheasant tail fibers. Okay. Just set those right on top. Kind of space them back. And then as I do this, just like the military may, I'm going to wrap those thread wraps right next to each other. Keep it very nice and trim. Okay. A little long, but you can get the gist.
Yes, I'm rocking because I can find things.
Oh yeah.
That's a new bin for me, is the assorted uni wires.
Do people not use UniWire anymore?
No,
I mean, that's kind of a staple, right?
No, I just like... Well, yeah, there's a few materials in here, so organization
Yeah,
is a little
yeah,
tough
I mean, yeah.
at times.
I'm impressed. I mean, that you came in clutch. I didn't even really need it yet, and it's right here when I need it. Now you got some crazy job going on.
I'll lift the whole thing up, sorry. I put it through the center, because I'm really weird.
I need my wire tight on the spool!
I usually put it on bobbins.
Wow.
I'm weird.
Alright, so I'm going to take, and one thing that you want to do, and again, like I was talking about earlier, one reason I use thread for a lot of my mayflies is just the ability to keep them trim and then match colors. And one thing that I do with any of the S&Ms, I tied in brown, olive, black, a PMD color. Traditionally, and again, you can do whatever you want.
Courtney's very excited we're doing the S&M, by the way.
Okay.
And then,
I just try to keep the people happy.
What Rick asked, what are some of your favorite steelhead flies for for the old metal faces?
Ooh, so steelhead flies. I like the bead. I like the bead.
This is a true Northern California
yeah. I'm just being real. I mean, I like the bead in the 8 mil and the 10 mil.
You like sheer nude 105?
Yeah, I like, dude, man after my own heart. No, one thing that I do, I have gotten, I don't know, probably over the last 9 or 10 years, gotten into swinging flies. My mom grew up in Oregon, and I spent a bunch of time outside of Lincoln City, and so I grew up swinging flies a lot for steelhead, but it was. It was old school stuff, purple perils, popsicles, pretty traditional stuff. And I also knew that after doing that in the late 90s and mid 90s as I was growing up, that like the fish I was fishing for in Northern California, they didn't do that. Like they didn't act like those fish. But we are fortunate enough locally is, on the American and the Feather, we do have some rivers that our spring run of fish will hit swung flies. And I pretty much guide exclusively in March and April before the striper fishing gets good for spring steelhead on the Feather. And we swing flies. I swing pretty simple stuff. I take a lot of the kind of newer trout streamers from guys that are tying and just basically downsize them, make them a little smaller. One guy who's been really kind of inspirational is really the whole Midwest steelhead movement. Even the nymphs that those guys tie have been like a big inspiration to my steelhead tying because they really combine like trouty elements to flies with kind of things that steelhead respond to, whether it's colors, size, movement, obviously Sanyo, and there was a book written probably 10, 12 years ago by a guy by the name of Matt Sapinski that I never bought it. I'm sorry, Matt. But I thumbed through it at the fly shop I was looking at,
Right.
like I owned it. And somebody actually did eventually buy it, so I apologize. They did not get a fully new copy. But and that was my first exposure to like Great Lakes steelhead fishing and this kind of blending of two fly tying styles. So long answer to a fairly straightforward question. I tie a lot of little streamers that represent small bait fish, and I swing those. Those are probably my favorite steelhead flies. Earth tones. Now, one key to tying the S&M here is when you're going back up the hook shank. And again, remember I said minimize the amount of time you go back and forth on the shank with thread. You tack that wire to the side. And again, that's going to give you that wider than fat profile.
I could have used that hook gap on my last guide trip.
Was that the one we guided together on?
No, it was after that.
Gotcha.
But they were eating like an 18 brown S&M and a size 18 midge. Like
Oh.
it was a fun.
That's
day.
not stacking the odds in your favor.
No.
All right, then I just palmer it. It gives it that kind of ribbed look. And again, this is probably a little bigger hook than I would tie it on, but it get good for demonstration purposes. Next thing I'll do, I take a goose biot, and I want to take one from the bottom of the strand that's going to have the bigger, and I take the curve and I tie it in as a wing case. Okay, and the curve is going to wrap around, and again, this is just muted colors. S&M stands for sack mayfly, and I came up with this fly.
Do you need root beer midge flash for the legs?
I do.
Oh, good. I got it right here.
Okay. And one thing I do with all my S&M nymphs is whatever that biot is, wow, freaking right on demand, is I make sure that the under, I always forget if it's thorax or the abdomen, I call it the body, is lighter than the wing case. Okay?
Nature Boy says, "What's up?"
Hey!
What up, Keith?
Keith.
And it's a Loon bobbin. He's using the Loon bobbin.
Yeah.
Couple questions about bobbins.
Gotcha. I make sure that the body or this under spot is lighter than the wing case. Because if you look at these mayflies, they are always darker on top than they are on
they're
top.
getting tan.
Yep. And usually, I would use a dry fly dubbing for this, but I'll be honest with you, I've been using the Franken dub. Seems fairly versatile, and it packs down pretty nice, so I can keep it trim.
It's interesting, a lot of the newer dubbings, like outside of like dry fly dubbing, it seems to be a lot bigger, bulkier build.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there haven't been any like crazy new awesome trout dubbings in a while.
You know, it reminds me like when they, like a while back, it was like blend everything with Angora. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is really, to be honest, one of the first nymph dubbings that I've really been like, okay, this is cool. I can use this for a lot of stuff. The last dubbing that was probably that, I guess, versatile for me was the Paxton's Buggy Nymph. I use a lot of that.
Okay.
You know, I don't even think they make that anymore. Next thing is to the legs. I'm going to use the midge flash. This is the root beer midge flash. Just double it up. Tie it in. Split it. Pin it back like that. Pull the wing case over.
Kelsey says that you look underage to have somebody who said, "Where's the beer at?" And Kelsey said you're underage, or at least he looks at. Kennedy said not with the beard. Probably true.
Dude, it keeps me respectable. I
Keeps
got
you
a little,
warm?
yeah, it keeps me warm. I got a few gray hairs in it, couple long teeth. Let's tie it off. Trim the top. Trim the legs. There you go. That's the S&M on the fire hole. just a hair long, I would say, for my, I guess, analness, but I'm sure it'll fish just fine. So yeah, that's it. Couple keys on the, again, you know, if you look at a lot of my Mayfly nymphs, like the first ones I came up with that are still commercially tied and fished a lot, it's basically an undercarriage that you can tie in a ton of colors. You can do a ton of different stuff to it, and it was just basically a function of having to guide and knew that, okay, this basic silhouette and I guess pattern fished well. And I really took that, like I said, from Quigley, like, you know, find the pattern, find the silhouette, and then work off that. And you don't need 50 different types of patterns. You need one pattern that you can tie in 50 different ways that works. And that's really probably the beauty of a lot of those early flies I came up with. So, yeah. Again, if I think that's all I got. Probably.
You didn't bring that like 13-inch rainbow trout wake bait pattern that you
No, that's all. That if I come back in the summer, I'll tie all the striper stuff. You know, we can do the like bring the meat, so to say.
There you go.
But yeah, if you're interested in chatting or watching what I do and seeing how I live, I'm on Instagram at H to the G to the B. At H to the G to the B.
It's Hogan Brown Fly Fishing.
HoganBrownFlyFishing.com.
Yep.
Or no, it's actually HGBFlyFishing.com.
Kennedy Brothers want to know if you have any stretches or exercises for fly tying.
No, dude, but I definitely have to stretch every morning. I can't, you know, I got to do my yoga. I mean, if you want to come over at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, we'll throw out the yoga mats and loosen up. I mean, you guys are younger than I am. You just wait. So, yeah, well, so thanks for having me on, Matt. Thanks for Loon for having me.
Absolutely.
Check out the website. You can follow all my social media and stuff like that. And hope to see everybody out on the river with hopefully some of the flies I taught you how to tie. So, thanks.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.